Okay, I think we're about to start. I hope everybody can see me. I hope everybody can hear me fine. This is a first such live stream, and it's a bit of a behind the closed doors. It's definitely not exclusive, but I thought it kind of makes sense to keep a few things under a bit more like a closed group environment where you can have a bit more intimate relationship, so to speak, an exchange of ideas, questions and answers, and kind of learn from each other. And today, and I guess one of the themes which we're probably going to explore going forward several times, and it's probably going to be part one out of many, we're going to talk about UX automation, design automation, and kind of try to draw out a roadmap ultimately, because nothing is like a light switch again. Nothing is kind of automated or not automated. There is kind of like a progress to every single enablement, to every single emulation of a task, to every single task or goal you might be performing or a robot might perform for you. So there is like a progression of that. And in this session, we're going to try to map that out. And of course, I'm going to explain and preface a lot of other things, because you can't just jump into the deep end and expect that everybody would just kind of get it and it's just going to click and, everybody's going to be happy. Because I made already several different videos on that, and it definitely, some resonated, some not so much, but it does take a lot of time to kind of reflect and think about it. And I hope with this session, it's going to be exactly that. It's purely just a material for you to kind of go away, take it away, and then say, okay, this is where it's at. This is where my head's at. This is what I can do with it as a UX researcher or designer, a pro practitioner, so to speak. And I know I'm not sharing yet anything on my screen, and it's going to be as unabridged as you see it now. I think we're going to spend a good hour or so, probably going to, go over that as usual, but that's totally fine. This session is open to members again, so everybody's welcome to join, but also kind of watch it. If you quick-headed cannot make it, make sure to watch it all, because I prepped some material and it kind of progressively takes us into that roadmap and kind of doing it together. And of course, I'm going to explain myself as much as I can. I think that's about it. Without further ado, let's jump straight into the actual material. So you're going to see immediately that I have a few different bits prepared. And I want to start with a background, because I think it's also quite important to so you understand where I'm coming from, because a lot of the things might be quite bold or we might seem quite conclusive, but that's kind of on purpose. That's because I worked with machine learned powered human centered decision support tools, and decision support tools is a big keyword, so stick, note it down somewhere, at least like I put it a mental pin in your head on it. AI systems for globally known clients. I cannot tell anything about it because they are the projects which generated hundreds of millions and billions, multiple billions yearly for distinct client names. And that's why I cannot name, because it's a really big value projects. And there have been countless of them. And I've been doing that since 2017, either consulting, either joining, either augmenting or design leading their efforts or shaping their design capabilities. So machine learning and AI has been my forte and something what I'm proud as a bread and butter for quite some time, kind of like taking the toolkit of UX design and then jumping into it and, like literally bringing the AI tools and technology in the best of light, not just kind of slapping UI on super hardcore, complex computational engineering efforts and calling it a day and saying this is AI, which is a bit lazy and which is very common right now. But no, actually digging deeper and employing unique methods, which I covered as well on my channel. And, I gave away a lot of those methods, like fuzzy cognitive mapping, which is one of them, is one of the techniques which you can map out existing human processes and how they go through mental models and how they distinctly actually evaluate their decisions and then inform that and put it into the generative models and then kind of roll it out. And there's a lot of course, activities and workshops and efforts you have to employ as a designer, but there's some of them. And you kind of almost can't avoid doing them, especially if you want to roll out AI solutions, which makes a lot of sense for the people. Now, in this session, though, I'm going to introduce a few other bits like futures thinking versus design thinking, because I want to actually make a video on futures thinking, but it's super important to reflect of what the future should be like, or what the future we want to. We can't just kind of focus on the future which everybody talks about, which is full automation, and just ignore the rest, because we can shape the future even if we cannot determine it yet. This is definitely a strategic road mapping session. So we're gonna, don't expect the tactics. I might make more videos, follow-ups, or maybe more live streams on this, or even I was toying with the idea to write a book of proper human-centered design for AI, not just again slapping a UI design or product design on AI technology and calling it a day and figuring stuff out as it goes. It's definitely not going to be about Figma's plugins, about the replacing of the jobs with some sort of specific toolkit. I'm going to answer a question which I received as well from one of the members, which is superb. And it's all to help, again, to reflect about the futures, and hopefully it's going to give you a primer and maybe a bit of a toolkit stack, which you kind of can start toying with or kind of researching a bit more, or maybe, again, requesting me to cover it further so you get some of that material if that resonates. So that's that. Now let's dive into futures thinking. And futures thinking here is quite important because, it's almost like a older brother to the design thinking in a way. It's like a level up to the things. It's how do we design futures? And if you are a design leader, you always need to reflect what's there to come, where you shine the light basically, and then work backwards and inform every single smaller decision in the day-to-day scenarios. So some of the principle and core statements which you definitely need to familiarize and kind of be okay with working with the future thinking is that the future is definitely not predictable. A lot of people will tell you things and they pretend that they can predict things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but ultimately nobody can predict the future, especially to do with social economic sustainability, bigger issues, global scale services and knock-on effects and ripple effects, which could, could be cosmic issues basically. Like you can never predict what could happen tomorrow at a bigger picture. You can predict the small things, but never like enlarge. The future is definitely not predetermined. Following on from a previous point, like you can't, determine some things, but it's never kind of set in stone. Even if you read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series or some sort of sci-fi, there's a lot of truth in that, but it's definitely not a recipe for the future. We get inspired from it and it kind of anchors us, but it's definitely not there. And lastly, the future can be influenced by individual choices, meaning you, and that's why exactly I'm bringing this, because the future is pliable. And to better illustrate that, one way to look at this is through the futures cone. And maybe you've seen this before, but it's a superb tool to kind of represent exactly what the futures thinking is like. Imagine a torchlight. And this is from Joseph Boros. The futures cone is a known title for it. But imagine the future is really that beam of light in the darkness. And you can direct that beam of light in different directions. Typically, when we kind of direct at something, we're very straight at it and we very definite of what we want to illuminate. And that's the probable future, which is something which you kind of go for because you know that it's going to be probable. There's obviously a plausible future. As the actual beam increases and it gets hazier, and more things illuminate, but not as vividly. You get the plausible and then the possible futures, and those possibilities basically is what you're trying to define. But The point of the actual illustration is that you, as a design leader or a researcher, a designer, are able to direct that light at a certain effort. So it doesn't mean that you're shining it there today at that specific, target. You can kind of shift the direction slightly between the plausible and possible futures, and then define exactly what it should be. And the future is going to be very different than what you've shown today and what the today's state is like. So that's how you can use it as a mental model ultimately, because with the futures thinking, you're there to define the preferable future, and AI toolkit UX automation is no different. We basically today, if we would obsess, and every single design leader would just obsess with Figma automations and plugins, then our future, this is probable future, is going to be just that. We're just going to be having the most amazing Figma plugins. But because we have preferable choices of what else we need to automate, the future is going to be very different. And that's a basis and thesis for this video, ultimately. In terms of how design thinking and futures thinking work together, again, futures thinking is a bigger brother of the design thinking. So for design thinking, you solve today's and kind of short to near future user needs, human needs. With the actual futures thinking, you're solving way ahead. Like, it's always way ahead. But if you define the future, that preferable future or desirable future, you can then work backwards and inform what the design thinking should be now. And this is where those interventions going to come in a lot in hand as we define that roadmap. Again, research the futures thinking a bit more, but ultimately all of it is this. Like, this should inform your activities. If you just want to go ahead and apply this into your day-to-day scenarios, you could just take the futures thinking model, and every ideation is going to start with the futures and only then with a design thinking. Or every decision you're going to make, you're going to kind of bounce between the futures and the design thinking, kind of zooming in and out, and then reflect exactly what's right to do. This is also one of the themes of the upcoming podcast with Samuel Huber, who is a planet-centric designer, and we cover a lot of that there. So stick around, because there's going to be an episode coming shortly. But that's the primer for the futures. Now, I want to kind of share a bit of a thinking and a bit of let me just check that everything is coming through right. I think that should be pretty okay. Okay. So what I want to share with you next is really this framework, which is, it's sourced with a lot of different elements, but it's basically, it informed a lot of those decisions and how, let's say, I helped product leaders and businesses create machine learning powered solutions, which could have been decision support or AI. And what does that actually mean? How do you actually layer that onion? How do you start from where you are today? Because every business, every product has some sort of current state. And how do you scale it up and make it smarter so you reach that full automation? And this framework, by the way, you might have seen a lot of versions of it. This is my version, which I kind of took on and built up upon, kind of takes you as a designer from manual state, super manual state, to fully automated state. And this kind of like progressively then allows you to identify exactly, okay, this is where maybe we are at, this is what we need to do next, or we could maybe jump ahead and try to somehow create full automation ultimately. If that doesn't make sense and you're watching this at any point, make sure to leave a comment down below. I'm happy to explain it further. But ultimately, there are several stages to human-centered AI experiences. In the first stage, you're definitely gonna have just the human. This is exactly where we're at today. And to be honest, majority, maybe 90%, let's say 95% of the products and services are in this stage. They're nowhere near to be smart. Then we're reaching into more assistive realm, where you have the human in those roles using assistive AI. And then the last one is autonomous AI, which is, self-making of the decisions. It's not just assisting humans in decision making. It's actually making the decisions of its own and maybe having a little bit of a fallback of a management of a user role. So these are the three kind of bands. And now the types of the actual experiences, or like what does that contain, are, so in a manual world, you're going to have something like the unstructured data, let's say, which is everything. Let's say I have this whiteboard here, right? And if I write down or draw out a chart for you to explain something, that's going to be it. It's the most primitive way to store the information or to provide some sort of experience to the user. Let's say if I say this, this is the code you can use at the checkout, then you could kind of write it down yourself and so forth. A next level of that would be maybe copying and digitizing, and that's the next stage where you have a data representation and a database of sorts. So you basically, all that unstructured data becomes semi-structured because it's digitized. It could be fully structured so that it's easy to manage and reach and filter and search and present to the user. And it could be, again, accessible on demand. So through any means possible, maybe a phone, maybe a dashboard, maybe whatever you mean. And that's what makes majority of the digital tools and services today happen or work. Now, the chasm between that and the blue area here, with where you have humans and assistive AI, is a massive one, because what's next is really how do you represent the data but add a bit of intelligence. That's where you start applying the generative models and AI to it. I'm gonna be entirely honest. Let's say when I worked on machine learning informed solutions, or generative computational science driven solutions, the technology which is super smart basically, but it's also so hard to reach for any designer to kind of craft together. Most of them ended up in the blue realm at best. The conditional automation, high automation, full automation, again, is like way ahead, and I'm going to explain exactly why it's going to make much more sense. But you can imagine that, let's say the AI, let's say in data representation state here, when you have all the database and you can make smarter decisions, AI analyzes those inputs and outputs and highlights the risks. So let's say for a user, it would just say, hey, you should maybe do this basically because I see some risks and some factors. The next one is the decision support, and the decision support is, again, this is exactly what we want as when we speak with AI solutions, because we want to inform and drive human decisions for the better. We don't want to completely replace just yet, unless we can do it right, and we cannot do it right, and we won't be able to do it right unless we can decision support first. So this kind of scales bit by bit, but in the decision support, AI analyzes inputs, outputs, scores the risks, and then allows that to be interpreted by the human counterpart and action by human. A simple printout or a note could be a decision support, albeit it's not AI driven. It's very quote unquote stupid or dumb. AI would be a smart decision support, and this is exactly what we're talking about. And then, as you can see, you always have a fallback: human memory, human processing. AI is creeping in as you progress throughout these stages, and in the totally autonomous AI realm, once you reach the decision support, you kind of reach this human conditional automation, where AI analyzes those outputs and makes recommendations for a specific course of action. And this is already where AI could be basically telling the user, the human, that, I crunched you millions of data entries and this is what you should be doing. Or let's say if you are, I don't know, a car mechanic, it's going to literally tell you by how many degrees you need to, tweak the wrench, let's say. The next level of that, of course, would be the higher automation, where, let's say, the AI would then totally replace the human interaction and doing that wrench work and doing it for them. So there is no human backup ultimately. AI starts creeping into it. And then the full automation is that end result. This is years ahead where everything is automated, and it's not just one tool which is automated, but services, the systems around us are automated, and we all link in, and everything is almost like a matrix world where human interaction is not needed anymore. So these are the stages. And of course, you could split them up, you could kind of dig deeper in if you want to, but ultimately it provides you with a framework as a designer or researcher to kind of go ahead and kind of say, okay, this is where we're at, this is what we could do next. And then apply the tools, because you can kind of engage with the right people, with the right structures, figure out the generative models and so forth. And UX actions of that, which I kind of very lightly peppered here and there, is about cognitive mapping, mental models, decision support research, etc. Things which people don't do enough in UX, or like almost nobody does in UX right now. And a lot of those experts who say that they're covering, UX AI, they're really just slapping product design, UI design, and calling it a day on AI technology. To do it right, again, you need to emulate what users do. Therefore, you need to understand how they make decisions and literally replace them, augment them, and then inform the generative models so that their decisions are informed with that technology. And that's when you're going to have UX for AI. It's not just the visual look and feel to kind of through abstraction layers and just calling it a day. And that's where those different tools, of course, there's many more. These are basically just categories of tools. In each of these, you have activities to be done to do it properly. And as you go through basically the automation, if you go to the assistive realm where you have humans and assistive AI, then you need to start making human-centered generative models. And let's say a good example would be the ChatGPT, let's say, and the research capability. They literally by accident probably arrive at that, but they created human-centered generative model to crunch and research a lot of data points and then spit it out to the users and kind of slapped a UI on top of that. Definitely not the right thing to do, but throughout a lot of trials and errors, they arrive at that. There's better ways to do that. And from my personal experience, like crafting machine learning driven platforms and solutions for your users, you kind of start with, again, human at the heart and then inform the AI, not the other way around. And so there's a lot of stuff we need to do as UXers. If you want me to cover more of this, do let me know in the comments, or I'm happy to do that and explore it. Maybe write a book, maybe cover in other videos. It really depends. And why I'm really covering this? I'm covering this in this live stream because this is how you would need to go through creating any AI tools. And UX as a meta skill, tools for research or design are no different. For the designers, you are gonna, majority of our tools are here, and majority of our craft is in this kind of data presentation database. There's a few tools which creep into data presentation, the decision support, but not much. And so if we want to replace or automate UX and inform our roadmap, every single tool and every single task or special action we do as specialists is gonna need to go through these stages and then replace us, because in next thing there's gonna be assistive AI and we are gonna act as managers or producers, as Nick Fine on one of the podcasts informed and kind of shared his thoughts. I definitely agree that our role is gonna become much more of a manager, of a producer, and we're gonna use assistive AI, and then shortly after autonomous AI, and only then we're not going to be needed because everything is going to be fully automated. So this is a primer, and a primer to inform what's to come. If this is too fast, again, leave a comments down below. I'm happy to kind of go back or do follow-ups as per usual. Now, I want to do next thing, which is design today. And I used the Double Diamond 2.0 from the Design Council. I think it's kind of perfectly illustrates that we are very far away from fully automating the design. And in this, maybe in this specific session, let's focus on product design, because if we also target user research or leadership or management capabilities with strategic bit, we're just going to have hours. It's going to become like a summit for days where I'm just waffling around and trying to kind of best, inform and kind of share my thoughts. But if we just focus on a tactical product design, where we are trying to automate it, or those UX skills, which are like the juniors would take on, let's say that majority of the skills are gonna really land in the exploration, reframing, creation, and catalysm, or catalyze as a verb, realms, basically. Those leadership and storytelling, continuing the journey and realizing when to continue, when to reconverge, connections and relationships, building with other human counterpart, orientation, vision setting is way too hard to even map out of what they are from, again, those decision support mechanism. And let's say if we would cognitive map on or mental model map those things, we're just going to spend years basically until we arrive at something which works for everyone. That's why double diamond is so generic in a way, because it applies to so many cases. If you start putting detail into it, you're never going to escape it because it's context dependent. And this skill set, which by the way, I wanted to kind of walk you quickly through. I'm not sure if I'm going to kind of go through it together. Maybe we can quickly do that. But the skill set today in UX realm are very hard to replace. So this table is something I took from my book, Get Into UX. There you have interactive kind of like a workbook way to self-evaluate where are you at. And you can go through every skill and say, okay, this is what I am, like entry level, beginner, or advanced person. But in this specific case, I wanted to kind of quickly go through and say what can we easily automate and what we cannot easily automate it. So I'm going to start with maybe what's very hard to automate. And all those soft skills and meta skills in UX are definitely going to be that, where I would say everything here, probably giving constructive feedback, probably not as hard. Seeking design feedback is not as hard. Written and verbal communication, that's not that hard because it's an end output, basically. Curiosity on the right things. You could kind of argue it's not that hard, but also quite hard to automate. Storytelling, collaboration, teaching, and evangelism. So storytelling, it has to be done right. So you could argue that it's in a medium. Collaboration is definitely very hard to, because it's so physical in nature and you have to control a lot of variables. Teaching and evangelism is a big one. You can't easily automate, and you could argue you could produce a lot of things as an AI if you automate, but you're going to spend hours and days there doing that. Workshop facilitation, that's going to be very hard. This is one of the hardest things a UX researcher or designer could do, in my opinion. Stakeholder management and influence, good luck with that. Business acumen, that's probably a yellow. I would say that some things machines can do way better. Again, if you put emotions aside, the business is just, to plow through the variables. Leadership, good luck with that. People management, good luck with that. And this is just the soft skills, basically, right? So you're going to understand that basically maybe you can sort of, and maybe, sorry, I'm being quite generous. The soft skills probably going to look like this, and it's debatable if it's orange, but ultimately very, very hard and irreplaceable. And that's exactly what's going to keep a lot of UX happening for years to come, until, until long time, basically, from now. Now, research, I'm not going to go in this session. Maybe we can revisit in the next one. Definition and ideations. Let me just borrow again a few of those ribbons. We can quickly go through that. If this is boring, skip ahead, but I would encourage you to think, because this is definitely gonna kind of make you think about things. Let me just reposition so it's easier to see. But convergent and divergent thinking, extremely hard. And this is knowing when to do that. How might we? Arguably could make it a bit easier, actually, because it's quite straightforward. Again, storyboarding from the previous thing is this, because it's in a definition, this is actually making it. Probably, actually, this is going to be quite easy, to be honest. Ideation workshop planning, that's quite easy for a good automation tools to do, just knowing what we can do. Workshop facilitation, good luck with that. To be experience mapping, very hard. That's why we default to Miro tools instead of using some sort of makeshift customer journey mapping tools. It's always bespoke, ultimately, for now at least. Scenarios and flows, that's one of the things which we definitely can automate and quite easily at that. So that's debatable if it's green or yellow. And then all other methods I'm not going to cover, but there's quite a few more. You could kind of imagine what they are. Information architecture, which sort of doesn't exist, but it does in every decision we make. We just don't talk about it anymore. Sitemaps, easy. You have a lot of synthetic data for that. Taxonomy, naming, and the data. This is a tough one to argue, but I would say yellow. Systems thinking, yellow as well. I guess it depends on what angle you look, but in my head, information architecture principles. Yeah, this is all very, very architectural. User testing methods. Probably a green one. Card sorting and a lot of other bits could be informed. Visual and structural hierarchy, a definite. And of course, some of these are red, some of these are yellow, but I'm just rushing through it. Bear with me and call out in the comments if something doesn't make sense. Usability heuristics. And usability heuristics is probably the easiest one to automate. Easy to quantify in a way. We already have been doing that for a decade or more. There is a lot of tools, metrics, and measures informing that. Interface principles, that's due to a lot of interpretive nature. It's a bit hard to say. Wireframing is a definite goodbye. Easy UI fundamentals. Just need to plug in the generative models. Pixel perfect and finesse, no chance to stand against that. Responsive design, no chance to stand against. Mobile design, and let's say mobile first, no way, Jose. This is gonna be easy. Interactive data visualization, BATS, it depends how big of the AI stuff you do. Again, all of these are dependent not just of what they are, but fundamentally which of these sections they go through. Let's say if today you're going to design an AI of UX tool or research tool, which is just going to cover decision support as a version 1, and you're going to call it a day, then these are going to look slightly different. But I'm kind of covering, I guess, the futures again aspects, the futures thinking. But what's it going to be, easiest to go to the almost full or at least higher automation, because it's not the same thing. So depending on where are you standing right now and what's that preferable future, those colors are definitely going to change, and the traffic light is going to look very different. And to be entirely frank, just coming back to the research, most of these are going to be red or orange. So I'm just going to leave it there for now. Again, I'm going to revisit it maybe in the next session because it's a deeper topic. Prototyping macro interactions, flows, components, yada, yada, yada. It's green or yellow, greener side. Micro interactions, definitely green. I'm just amazed how many designers who have 10 years under their belts, and I'm talking visual designers, interactive designers, make so many mistakes where they just forget the fundamentals. And I feel like AI and a generative model based off of a cognitive mapping of it, how a designer would approach, let's say, Fitts law, is so easy to automate. Just the positioning of elements and pushing everything, together is just like so many designers just miss that, even if they have so many years under their belt ultimately. And that's why it's going to be very easy for any tool who's like, who has that, which has that smart capability to do that. Interactive motion design, easy. Very simple principles ultimately. Takes a lot of time for humans, but it shouldn't if you plug in the generative models behind it. Atomic design principles, goodbye. Working with design systems. Again, design systems are going to be first to be automated, and that's almost like the topic of this this session, because the roadmap, which I'm going to get to in a second, is going to include that. Branding, color theory, accessibility, UX writing. Let's just make it a big green. Ooh, I can't. This is a spoiler alert. A lot of the graphics in the book Get into UX were designed in Miro, by the way. So that's why it's interactive. This is a literal copy paste of a printout. And the printout, as you can see, is interactive because a lot of it was done by me as I was writing it to better illustrate. But yeah, so it kind of looks like that, right? Like the more tactical, the more task-based your tasks are, the more it's going to look kind of like this. And the softer the things are, the more human the things are, communicative, the harder they're going to be automated. Again, using these as a basis for a principle for that preferable future. Now, I wanted to do a heat map really, but maybe I'm going to do that in the next session where I'm just going to quickly map it out. I don't think it's needed anymore. You can kind of see the heat of what's holding us back if we want to adopt AI immediately into UX or not. But what I want to do really to reflect here is these things and kind of highlight yet again. So bringing back the framework of UX for AI by vaexperience, you're between the manual and automated stages. You have these human-powered, purely human and assistive AI, and then autonomous AI, and then pure Skynet, let's call it that. There's going to be those domains, and I simplified here that there's UX research, product design, content, which a lot of it is just being smashed out of the park right now by automation, business and service design, the strategy, leadership and management, and design operations. There could be a lot more, a lot of different ways to slice it, and I'm not sure if you can see it. Oh, now you should be able to see it on the live stream, but you're going to see that these are, let's say, those slices of our design capability, which we plan to automate or we think is going to be automated. Now, as I mentioned before, if I would just really quickly take and assemble a slide, majority of this like automation right now or smarter technologies in 2023 is really maybe slicing just slightly the data representative layer where you have a bit of assistive AI, but not really purpose-built. ChatGPT is not purpose-built. UX research synthetic stuff is not purpose-built. Dovetail has a vision with a purpose-built stuff, but it's even then not ambitious enough in my head. It's still just that almost like data presentation or decision support tooling. It's not ambitious where it's even touching the vision of a high automation. So we haven't even thought about the futures thinking. And again, most of the tools, entrepreneurs out there, nobody thinks about the futures thinking, which we need to. Like if you really want to do it right, need to set those sails for that like few years in advance and what the full automated future is going to look like, and then let's work backwards and create those steps. Nobody's doing that. We're still just kind of crapping our pants trying to see where the ChatGPT is going to be used, and so we're never going to escape this stage ultimately, or the type of solution, which is decision support. Or we're not even going to scrape a decision support until we can do it right and reflect what else is there and how we can do it right. Anyhow, now, one thing to highlight, let's say in the future, I want to just show what the role of a UX specialist is going to be like. Let me just reflect that it's visible on the screen, right? Yeah. So between all of these, and between the manual and automated, your role is definitely going to change. And this is what I'm, again, almost predicting, but also setting it from a preferable future perspective. Ultimately, right now, every UXer, even if you're a leader, is still a contributor or a specialist whenever you need to do UX. You are never, even if you delegate to a person as a leader, a design leader, or a researcher, you are never delegating it as if it's an AI or like a fully automated counterpart. You're still involved and thinking in a manual terms, in unstructured data presentation as a database, and so forth. And that's going to persist up until we are going to reach our UX tooling and automated tooling decision support stage. That's where our roles are going to shift from the specialist or contributor into human experience producer or manager, which means we're going to start using the AI tools to do the grunt work, and we're going to kind of sit back and say, hey, I'm here to make decisions, be strategic, and going to shape human experience. I'm not a designer anymore. And maybe this human experience producer, I hope, is going to stick. If someone's watching this years after, this has been published, do let me know. I would be more than happy to reflect if there's even any traction with these ideas. And then lastly, after we go through as human experience producer manager roles, the high automation, let's say, is reached, all the different realms and disciplines are fully automated, and you have an idea in your head that I want to research this thing and I need new product or service. It sends a signal through a smart synapse IoT network into your floating laptop or a cloud of information, a smart cloud, which is a literal cloud with no tactile interfacing. It's literally in the air, which you cannot see, where the information is being processed. It's super quantum. It immediately synthesizes the data and fully automates the research, the design, the product, everything. Like all those archaic dinosaur-like activities are done for you. This is where we're at. The full automation happens there, and I have no idea what's going to be called then. You're probably not going to exist at that point, and your children or grandchildren, whoever you're going to take on that, going to have very different understanding of what designers were. It's kind of like if you remember the phone operators, which actually still exist in some, let's say in a hospital I saw as a department. It said, I don't remember what exactly the term is, but basically where back in the day the phone operators would connect you with a line and physically plug a line into different telephone line, and then you could connect to that and call them, and they kind of act as a middleman, as an operator. Now that doesn't exist because we all do that through the actual telephone networks and automation in a way. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The UX designers in that point are just not going to exist anymore. They're just going to disappear. So it's again going to be way ahead of time and in advance. Anyhow, just being cautious of the time, I need to speed up a bit. I have a lot to cover, but I hope this makes sense and you're kind of warming it up and you're enjoying this a little bit, and it kind of informs you, because the next one is really that roadmap. And the roadmap itself is very scrappy for now. It's really just a draft. Excuse me. I didn't even want to cover like the content because it's basically, it's at a point of no return in a way. And we just effed up in a way, allowing a lot of those kind of, the things I was excited at first, like content generation, copy generation elements. it's a big topic, which I don't want to kind of derail or go on a tangent with. But if we take something like a product design, again, just going from the top, ignoring the UX research again, because it's a massive, I'm going to cover it maybe in a follow-up session to create a roadmap for it. But if we take a product design as one of those elements, as one of those buckets of disciplines, and content design, let's say maybe we're just going to do it last, business service design and stuff like that, the soft skills, the business acumen and stuff which we covered before in here are the last to replace, so maybe not even going to scratch that surface. So let's focus on product design. And if a product design, let's walk through exactly what the actual roadmap is going to be like. Let me just stylize it just a tad, so it has its own identity. But let's start with this. The roadmap really began back in the day. And this is my thesis. And I know it's going to inflate and inflame a lot of people, I think, especially those who are quite stagnant or conservative in terms of what automation actually means in product design. But if we talk about producing the product results and achieving outcomes through product outputs, which is a lot of it is UI, a lot of that began in the early web. And it's not saying it's a bad thing or we effed up back in the day. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. This is the reality where we're at. Therefore, preferable future is at the footstool of that. We kind of need to, kick off from there and do better. But it started with very clear human-centered human-computer interaction principles, the early machines, the mice, the keyboard, the screen, how people interact with it, with their limbs and so forth, and the psychology of the interpretation, the optical skills. A lot of those kind of permeated into UX disciplines. That then, I guess, one of the milestones has been the UI guidelines and obsession with it, that every design we made had to be documented. And at a rudimentary form. So if I take this unstructured data, I think, let me just draw it out. From that perspective, all of these kind of were here, and we probably, the early web is again somehow like this, maybe again by 2023. So it kind of would look like this ultimately on a timeline, if we would just want to represent it in that progression. But UI guidelines was massive milestone because it allowed to create data points so that we can start making smarter decisions, which anyone could get information from. So if you say that your hex value for this pen's cap is, I don't know what it could be, maybe you can tell me, but it's dark gray, let's say 66666, right, hex. That created a central point of decisions which developers could pick up, which brand or content people could pick up, which you as a designer could pick up and work together on. It's one decision making point. And the UI guidelines basically became as massive decision making points, but of course unstructured. So they're quite stupid at that point. Then things like atomic design came. And of course, a lot of other things in between doesn't matter. Let me highlight the things which I think you need to know about. Atomic design principles by Brad Frost, let's say, and many other people kind of coined how we scale the components and the logic behind, let's say, the smallest of the components and tokens and variables and atoms into molecules, organisms, you name it, into products, right? Like, how does it scale? So we created a very simplistic mental model, which if you would digitize, you could create design system AI ultimately, but just nobody does yet. But the logic is there already. You just need to do it. It's hard work, but anyone can do it. Then things like Google Material Design came, which is digital version of the atomic design and other principles, and a lot of other design systems out there. The Figma libraries further escalated that digitization and automation of the things. So the things now, instead of being unstructured and dumb, began to be data presented in a database. and you can already structure a lot of those values, and they are existing in, in the cloud. Basically, that's what you can access in the Figma libraries. Then there's countless of purpose-built abstracted tools which separate designers and the code and the product making, and kind of isolate it for the wrong reason, which I'm going to cover in a second. But XD, Photoshop, Fireworks, a lot of other tools for web design and development, the early Microsoft tools, Macromedia tools, a lot of decommission tools and things which we still have, like Principle for micro interactions now, or Wizard, let's say, was one of the big tools, and it still is, but it changed the direction a lot. It was meant to be automated. So a lot of those things then kind of fed into the isolated experiment epoch, which we are still at, where you have these delightful pixel pushing, efficiently broken design processes and unstructured data mess. It's basically where we kind of we go on these walled gardens of product design and UI design. We take it away and we design, albeit we say we're open on cloud and every product manager and engineer can adopt Figma and observe things. Rarely they're the ones who are also designing or kind of designing and publishing it to the user. They still need to, take their shovels and lift the heavy heavy crap basically, and shovel it into their environments and develop the tools and then publish it. So there is still a lot of kind of walls and silos. Doesn't matter if we are so excited about our own pixel pushing environments and how flashy the Figma got, and condition statements and variables and so forth. They're amazing tools, but they're still isolated. And that's why we have so much mess. And to be honest, obsession with the tools and kind of that sparkling and glance instead of reflecting off the principle level philosophy of how it should be in the end, the preferable future again, is what keeps us kind of like back ultimately. If you really want to automate the tools, or maybe if you even fear AI, shout about Figma and Figma AI plugins more, please, because it's gonna keep us in this regard, and we're never gonna progress, and probably gonna our preferable futures, again following future perspective, are gonna kind of satellite into different directions, but not really into the one where the future, the fully automated future, is the right one. That's caveat ultimately. But anyhow, reflecting on that, you're going to see that again, we're still here between data presentation. Decision support is minimal. There is no AI assistive decision support just yet. Even if the plugins are there, it's not that. If we would to want to kind of go beyond data presentation alone and go into decision support and automate UX there, we need to think about allowing anyone to be a designer. And I know this is a dangerous statement, but bear with me, because it's inevitable. Everybody has to become a designer if we are going to automate things, and we are. Just need to do it right. So the actual basically next stage would take us, let me see, where would it take us really? I would maybe say it would take us to high automation, and then next one is probably going to be full automation, or maybe no. It's probably going to be something along the lines of that, I would presume. Something like that, basically. And full automation, no idea, but we can at least anticipate and roadmap what's to come in the high automation as a stage, right? And so anyone's a designer epoch is really what would happen if we would go beyond the just representation of data and content and kind of start really automating how we design and emulating what designers do, so we can automate those smaller decisions or tasks. Some of it is happening, of course, but in just isolated areas. So the first stage, just like I noted those milestones, the first milestone would be that the product and UI design models need to be captured. You cannot have AI generative models applied again rightfully. If you want to do true UX AI, you can't just slap UI stuff on on AI ideas and call it a day. You need to capture the human mental models and how do they design today and what decisions they make and in one's strengths, what qualities, again, fuzzy cognitive mapping, the things which I earlier highlighted. Apply the right basically methods to do that, but you need to do that. Then you need to do actual model shaping. So like LLM-like models applied to those public design systems. Again, we have so many, IBM, and other, I'm blanking on the actual design systems, but there are so many public, like Google Material Design and every other which is being published, the design principle elements. If you can basically digitize all of that and plug it in the right generative models, all the data, again, to learn from, you can then combine it with the mental models of the designers and create a very abstracted toolkit where anyone could come to the tool and say, create me a banking app. And then it would do at a relatively high precision and quality, let's say. It would spit out you the Figma mockups, and absolutely anyone could do that. Product manager, engineer, CEO, it doesn't have to be just you. Now, you could argue that a lot of tools are already trying to do that. They're doing crap work. Sorry, I almost bleeped it. This is family-friendly live stream. Of course they can, but they're doing crap job. They're nowhere near. It's very rudimentary, very simple. They're still giving you a simple set of mockups of sort of good enough, but they're not like, where you would call it a decision support or conditional automation realm. No freaking way. To get to the anyone's product designer, you again need to do these freaking milestones, which all entail their own epoch of bloody evolution, basically. There's just so much actions to be done and so much to explore, but this is basically roadmaps it into the conditional automation, and the high automation then would kind of bridge the gap between the product design and the product maker epoch. And this is super important because right now, again, we're divorced from the engineering. In the future, engineering and design are going to become one. If the actual evolution is going to go as I preferably predict here, the designer and coder mental models are going to be captured and going to be merged. So both the design and how you code it at the same time are going to be informing those code and UI design at the same abstraction layer. Meaning you're not going to have separate tools, different environments, separate language. It's going to be one language, which is going to be maker language, let's say. So UI and development roles are not going to be a thing anymore. Anyone's going to become a product maker. So you, your mom, your friend, whoever it is, product manager, CEO, are going to go on the same app. And you're going to see that the interface, again, could happen in VR or whatever, but it's going to be the same thing. You might describe it in a voice, in a type, in a text, click a button. They're going to be probably similar, but the underlying AI is going to be different. And this is what really a lot of designers right now miss, because they believe that at each of these stages, the actual product could look very different. And of course it could, but the more you work with the actual machine learning, computational engineers, AI, data analysts, you understand but that it doesn't have to. The systems just become smarter as long as you have the foundations, again, from human-centered design perspective. So the tool in decision support could look very similar to high automation, maybe just be a bit simplified, but still the describe an app and give me the results could be the same, or maybe the results are just going to go and launch to the user immediately here, depending on the scenario and complexity and, you name it. But that should make sense. Now, if everybody's going to become a product maker, meaning designer and producer and a coder, without using those tasks, they're just going to be able to come in and have an intent that they need an app, and here's an app. AI just made it for you immediately, just with a click of a button. New product maker mental models then gonna inform the new generative models to then become even smarter. And then the high automation product making tools are gonna be a reality again. So there's almost like a cycle. I don't know if you noticed, but Here, the mental models inform the generative models, and then you have further abstracted toolkit. Here you have, again, those mental models, like a version 2 with a bit of complexity informing the generative models, and then you get even more abstracted toolkit. And then it kind of like rotates that way, that you have first emulated what people actually do, then you codify it, for a lack of a better term, and then you basically abstract the tools, and it kind of rotates and goes in those cycles, and it further enhances and kind of evolves this stage, AI UX ultimately, where you go from very manual to super automated. That should make sense. And this is the actual roadmap ultimately. For a product design, if we had early web, we have this isolated experiment epoch, which is super ugly. Next, in the short future, we're going to have anyone's a designer epoch. And I know there's a lot of people who are unhappy about it. Oh, like anyone's a designer. Well, this is the reality. At some point, we're going to get there. And to be honest, I feel like if I were to slap some years here, again, let me borrow that stick I had in the everything. And just bear with me. I mean, this is a live stream, so it's a bit hard to be on point, but let's say this is the 2023, and it was a designer epoch, probably gonna takes us until it's super right, until conditional automation, I would say at least 5 to 10 years. And then anyone's a product maker is probably another 5 years, kind of like gradually reducing that. And why? It's because a lot of those things might seem like they are decision support tools or these conditional automation tools, but they're very simplistic. They're not fully automated just yet. And if you are a product designer, I'm talking super holistically, that end-to-end product design, this is who you are and this is all you do, minus the leadership and research skills. There is so much of those specific tools and tasks which need their own counterparts and replacements. And therefore, that's why I believe that it's going to take quite some time. Let's say 30. Again, I'm going to be very wrong because the future, again, is not predictable. But just as I said before, future is not predictable. Future is not predetermined. Future can be influenced by individual choices. So if we set the direction right as product designers right now, we can basically automate it right because it's going to inform every new decision we make. And if you're going to join a startup who wants to automate design systems or wants to automate user testing, something like very evaluative research, let's say, which should be probably the easiest way maybe to automate, presumably. You are then can take this as a mental model and maybe make a future a bit better for us or for anyone else to come. So this is the roadmap version 1. We're probably going to return and it's going to make the roadmap version 2. Now, before I leave, I want to address one of the Q&A and one of the questions from a friend, again, a channel member, a supporter. I'm really appreciative, by the way, of all the people who support. Again, it's not about like the monetary benefit. You do help it. I mean, it's symbolic, but I know it's also a big commitment for some of you, and I truly appreciate it. To be honest, it's not like it buys my time or it buys me making these videos or live streams. It's that it tells me that you want it, and it motivates, because it's so hard to do this alongside all the other ventures and, the startups I'm trying to work on and full-time jobs and things of that nature. And life gets in the way. It's like, then I know that, okay, there's members I kind of keep accountable. So it keeps me grounded in a way. And I know that you want to see more. So thank you so much. It means truly a lot. I'm not just saying this. I could never have hoped for anyone to just kind of say, okay, here's a quid, get a coffee this month. I'm absolutely over the moon with that. So Adrian saying, please could you talk about the AI software you're currently using yourself and what you've seen, heard is upcoming or making waves in AI UX space. Also, as a manager, lead yourself, are you using any AI to manage lead or help your team in a way? More of a management question rather than UX work itself. I feel like you are very ambitious with this question, Adrian. I mean, I can answer a couple of them. One of like the first one, I think, about making waves. Again, this is all still in here. It's nowhere near where I would want it to be, like decision support, conditional automation, high automation, for automation of a UX. Nowhere near. So I can't even highlight. I guess I highlighted in some of the videos, some of the tools, which already saying you can describe an app and you can gonna get a mockups, which you can then take into Figma and tweak. But so what? Like, it's not a big deal for you to download the banking templates or finance app templates and do the same way. Like, you don't need an AI to do it for you, unless you're going to feed the branding. But like, it's still like, it doesn't save so much time, or it doesn't really benefit designers apart from being delightful. The second question, and I hope I'm not dismissive of a question, but you should get the point, after all of this session. I hope you watch. Also, manager yourself. What tools do I use? To be honest, none of them are, again, UX specific, because they're nowhere near where I would use them. Again, I'm going to highlight just a couple, like where I'm using AI tools, okay? So you can follow up in a question if it's good enough or not of an answer, but that's me. I just don't see a lot of it adding much value. Therefore, like ChatGPT adds value, but in a super specific use cases or tasks. It doesn't automate my workflows end to end, because it's still just like a very sliver in a certain use cases. It's not there yet, or it's not even ever going to be there, because it's not built for designers. Until we have startups or businesses actually automating tools with this thinking in mind, that there is a progression of sorts, and they are for UX use cases, then it's just like it's gonna be manual labor with a lot of exciting UI tools, but not really anything scary or anything really that impactful. So anyways, in UX research and strategy, what I use a lot is Elicit. And this is basically an interface, a text-to-search interface, where I use it for market research, deep trends, behavioral insights. But very basically enter anything you want, like let's say behavioral studies, or pop psychology or user psychology. You could debate if it's right or wrong, there's a lot of debate there, but you basically are able to search any scientific literature, and it's going to tell you the confidence, the tags. You can save it for later. It's a superb tool if you like to dig deep into the core of it, like that systemic thinking, and understanding exactly why the things are. You apply the critical thinking hat and you actually love research. This is it. It informs a lot of things like market research, deep trends, as well as the research, like why this is the way it is, because there is a lot of studies. Like, again, 175 million papers which are plugged into this AI layer ultimately. It's just again, AI using a lot of those available papers. Strategy and business and service design, proposal and doc writing, editing is ChatGPT is irreplaceable. Again, it's very easy to train it up. Let's say if you are part of a business where you write a lot of docs to propose stuff, which is a lot of business right now, and a lot of leadership decisions, roles, you're gonna find yourself writing, those proposals. They're gonna be written documents. They're not gonna be just slideshows. Again, depends on the company and culture, but in a lot of a big tech, you're gonna need to explain yourself in a written format as succinctly as possible, and ChatGPT for that is irreplaceable, because it can add facts, it can add citations, it can add statistics as well. Of course, you need to double check, but I love it because I can kind of write and I know it's like, oh, I know this is a trend. I just need a bit more hardcore data to support it. I can kind of pull up and it kind of gives me more and maybe even correct me if I'm asking it to. Now, for user research, of course, Dovetail is irreplaceable. There's a lot of other tools, but for qualitative research, planning, execution, synthesis, playback, we highlighted that with Nick Fine on the podcast. But the automatic transcription, synthesis, sorting, tagging, smart connections, things of that nature, nowhere near what you would call an AI, but there's a, that AI tool which kind of is in that data presentation creeping into a bit of a decision support, but ever so slightly in certain use cases only, not as a one thing for a user research. Leadership and management, design operations. One thing which really came into my mind, very simple, is again ChatGPT for higher job spec, grammar updates and things of that nature. It's as simple as that. I mean, there is a lot more, but all those tools, again, they help with certain tasks. They don't automate UX or what you do day to day. And I mean, people say you need to use it, like it's going to replace you or it's going to pass you by. Yes, but it's like such a, they still applied. They're not, they're not replacing anything you do. And all the tools which try to replace, they're far away from the quality you would expect. That's underlying reasoning. Content design, brand copy, and things of that nature, again, ChatGPT. But one of the interesting examples maybe of how I used the AI tools before was getting inspired. So Midjourney DALL-E I used this is actual screenshot from ideations we had in one of the companies I helped with, where I used it as stimulus. I said, this is what the future, AI thinks this is what the future is going to look like for engineering teams, let's say. And this is what we're going to do. And we just walked through it. We captured ideas and notes and kind of like, I think there was a bit of voting, but just to stimulate those ideas. I'm not going to go into like the actual tools. This is a manual capture, but this specifically can help bring people on the journey and stimulate those things, because not everybody is aware that, okay, this is what, that people could do. So you could use those tools to, again, supplement some of the ideations, let's say, for the stimuli. Next, I guess this is very meta, but I use Canva a lot, and it has kind of Midjourney or DALL-E built-in interface, again, text to image. Again, it's such a small use case where I'm like, okay, I have this photo, please add, give me a photo of something, or like, please generate me something, like, and that's how I make the thumbnails for these videos very quickly as well. I don't use Photoshop or anything else. Maybe it shows, I don't care. I mean, and there's not enough time in the day to optimize everything or think twice about it. So use Canva, AI text to image, and there's might be a better tool. Maybe you use Photoshop, stuff like that. But this is what I use, and not just for this is an example of YouTube thumbnails, but I use also for slideshows, images to generate them, because I actually design a lot of my slideshows in Canva right now. That's just because it's easy. It's easy to present, easy to export, easy to manipulate, and so forth. And that's about it. No product design tools. There is a few plugins in Figma, but I don't want to even mention them because they're menial. They're not really that impactful. I mean, maybe it helps you to save you an hour or a few hours, but in the leadership positions, it's more about strategy, and it's all about driving the other humans basically, and influence and communication, and how you do that is with these specific tools here and there. Hope this answers you a question. This is going to definitely change as I discover new things. Make sure to leave a comments down below if you have anything to propose or any new finds. But whew, that has been something, right? I hope you enjoyed this live stream. If you want more of these, I almost misspoke. If you want more of these, do let me know. Smash that like button. I'm gonna actually, just for all awareness, I'm gonna definitely create some clips out of this as individual videos, just to incentivize more people to support the channel for full transparency and honesty. But I also want to do another round of UX research and maybe leadership skills, road mapping, just like this, if anyone's interested in a follow-up. Or also, just do let me know your thoughts and requests. Again, you remember, you're shaping this together with me. I need ideas, and I'm definitely looking at everyone's contribution and then making a decision if it's, good or not. You're basically my assistive AI in the decision support right now, but minus the technology. You're a real human being. So That's about it. Let me end it here, and you have an awesome day.